Good morning and welcome to Frank's School. Fifth year, 119th day, first video. An inconvenient set of values. That's what it occurred to me. I'm saddled with, or I've been strapped with, an inconvenient set of values. And I think of Al Gore's movie, An Inconvenient Truth. I even looked at that. It's been 10 years since that movie was made. And amazingly, not that much has actually been done. But anyway, I don't want to talk about his movie. I just, that name, it's inconvenient. Sorry, everyone's going along earning lots of money, raping the planet, but you may not want to hear this. This may be inconvenient, but this is true. The ice caps are melting, the glaciers are disappearing, etc. You know about that. My shoulder's getting better. It would be a cause to not still be quite so philosophical, but I'm going to take a lesson from it, and I'm going to still be somewhat philosophical about what I'm doing. And maybe it was a pinched nerve. I had a doctor's appointment. I was actually going to go to the doctor, but then I realized I actually think it's getting better. All right, now what is this set of values? Well, I don't know if I'm going to go in to try to explain what they all are because I have elsewhere. But I want to tell you in a way how they came about. I had said about Grandpa Jim, he had a sort of an English gentleman farming attitude toward farms, with this love of farming, of the land. And it's not the same as eking out an existence as a peasant. It wasn't that. I mean, not the English gentleman farming that he had. So I spoke about that. And from him, I mean, obviously, I absorbed many of his values. And one of the things he used to say was, wood does not have to be painted. You don't have to paint wood. Another thing he taught me, which I basically agree with, the only reason to paint wood I can think of is so you can paint it again. Because then you almost have to. There was a Harvard connection back in the camp side of the family. There was a man named Ernest A. Hooton, I think, who was, I believe, a professor at Harvard back maybe 1920s, maybe. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in. He had Ernest A. Hooton, Up from the Ape. He wrote a book. It was about evolution. And he had a son. It wasn't a joke. I think he really did have a son named Newton Hooton. Pretty sure that was true. But anyway, I don't want to get into the whole genealogy now. And then Mom, she imbued me with a whole bunch of values, and some of them made things hard. No plowing. To the extent that she had the interest in this farm, and I was going to be on her farm, her and Dad's farm. Before that, her sister. There were four. Anyway, I finally came here, and she said, no plowing. You don't need to plow. No spray. No fertilizer. No more lime. Grandpa Jim put enough lime on there. And, I'm thinking at that point, still having some hopes that it could be a farm. The Antonson Farm, I called it, after the division was managed between the Palmer side and the Antonson side. How do you farm in that kind of an economy? Now you could say, well, she was way ahead of herself with organic farming. I mean, organic farming was known, and she would have known that these are principles of organic farming. But how do you actually make it happen? It was a dilemma. I finally turned to water because she had not said that I could not irrigate. So it was around that time that I turned to irrigating the land and draining it. And what an experience that has been lifelong. The learning from that. I may devote a large part of next year to that, possibly go back to it. But much of it is already built into Frank's School. It was back around that time, this would be the early 1970s, that the characters of Wedge and Marion I created. Wedge got that name because he split. Wedge splits things. And I was instrumental in splitting this property so that Helen's and her husband and children could have half of it, and Mom and Dad and the children could have half of it because they could not get along. And it was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life to manage to achieve that split. And then Marion, this character doesn't, the main thing about him is he's a craftsman, but he doesn't speak. And I think I created him largely because of this. There was this inconvenient set of values that I had that I couldn't really explain them. And I can't so easily explain them now either. So Marion didn't speak. If you wanted to know what Marion thought, you had to just look at what he did, the character. Now, add to these what happened to me in Peace Corps, my Peace Corps experience. It wasn't exactly what the Peace Corps taught me. The Peace Corps didn't set out to teach me this stuff. But by living in Brazil for 3 years among poor people who were craftsmen, it changed me to the extent that when I came back, my mother really felt that I had changed. I had been a happy person when I went, but when I came back, I wasn't happy anymore. That's what she said. What to explain it? See, I had lived in another world, and I'd seen another way of being. And again, I'm not going to try to explain this set of values, but I'm going to try to explain why they're there, or admit that they're there. Decentralism was my solution, ultimately, and the Decentralist Manifesto, it's online, DACT and Inacting, Decentralist Action and Inaction. I did my best to try to explain it. See, what happened was, well, I'll find a way to explain it. Permaculture, but this is late 60s, early 70s. You can even think of it as part of the hippie thing if you want. That was a little bit like what I was thinking, but I never really embraced it. Still haven't quite. Woofing did not yet exist, but there you can see some of those same values. An admiration of the trades and a grief at the loss of handwork. I came back with, and still have, quite an anti-Harvard feeling. My 4 years at Harvard, and I did graduate. I was ready to throw them all out. When I came back, I became a carpenter's apprentice. I just hired on as a laborer and worked as a carpenter. This was in New England for about, maybe 2 years, and that's where I learned my trade. I did not pursue wealth. I was not going after wealth. And ecological morality, that could explain part of this different set of values. See, back in the early 70s, this stuff was known. This stuff was known. It's just, it was inconvenient. It's like Al Gore's. It was inconvenient to know this stuff, and even more so to act on it. An example of that is gasoline engines. I don't like to use them. I don't. You take a guy's riding the lawnmower away, and say, all right, let's see how your property looks now, here in the United States anyway. Well, I don't think I'm not sure I've ever been on a riding lawnmower. Now, a push lawnmower I've used, but well, anyway, and waste. You don't waste things. A culture of waste. That's part of this morality, this set of values. But again, I don't really. I feel a little bit like Marion. I can't really explain them so well. But if you want to know what they are, well, look, look at what I'm doing and how to figure it out. What am I doing? This monolithic culture, let me jump to it. One of the things that occurred to me is maybe not so bad is because, people, if they have a mind, realize that the monolithic cultivation of corn or wheat or oranges or just about anything, when it's monolithic, when there's only one species, that is potentially disastrous. Well, there is a monolithic material culture. The same sort of thing goes on in the United States. Building culture, for example, if you look at the universal building codes and the way they're wrapped up with insurance companies and banks, and the code system, it drives toward a monolithic. There's one way of building, and that's potentially disastrous. Let me back up here. So what did I do back in the 70s in this dilemma? Well, I got married. There was a woman, my second wife, brave enough to marry me. My first wife knew I had these inclinations, but we married before we went into the Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps profoundly affected her too, no doubt about it, but not quite in the same way, or I would even dare say not quite as extremely so as it did me. But anyway, I got married, and of all things, I ended up using Harvard because my second wife made it possible for me to go back to school to get certified to teach, which I didn't need. I was born to teach, but you know, you had to jump as part of that monolithic education business. You had to have that stamp on your butt that said certified, approved, so I could teach. And then my teaching career, I was fine with that because I was never really asked to teach something that was against my set of values, because I was teaching humanities, and especially from a historical viewpoint. So I was teaching about other times and other places, and I was could get very excited about those times and places from what people had done. I had a lot more trouble as we approached the 20th century. I did not teach well about the 20th century, and the closer it got to modern times, well, for one thing, it began to approach the point where my set of values were going to be so inconvenient. All right, so anyway, given this situation, once I retired, or even before that, here, back on the camp ranch, what I'm doing right here, what to do? Just let it go. You know, just let it go. Nature would take it back. The fields would gradually become Russian olive and thorns and briars and whatever, and it would heal. Well, it would heal itself. It would never become virgin forest again, but it just wouldn't be so human friendly. Just let it go. In a way, that's what's happened to most of the farm. It's just this 37 acres that I have. No, I didn't. Or let it be the once and future village. It was once a village. Could it be a future village? Maybe. I mean, in a sense, that's where I am. But in any case, it's now known. It was once a village. And then I guess the other thing about it is it's almost been, you know, I think I've known of women before that I felt almost sorry for them because they were so beautiful. What a problem to be beautiful. Well, this land is sort of by nature beautiful, so there is that. And so that's part of the love that no doubt goes right down through Grandpa Jim, Mom, me, the Palmers. And then I finally wrote this down. So what's the future hold? Is something going to snap? Like my shoulder or my heart or something? Possibly, and I've got to think about that. But I don't so much mean that now about me personally. I mean in general. I have rambled. I was afraid about that. But in any case, I am burdened with an inconvenient set of values. And if you want to try to figure them out, I would say go into Frank's school. I'm not even going to give you a set of links because I don't think that's likely, but if you would go back and look at Decentralist Manifesto, that would sort of be a start. All right, bye for now.